Welcome to SHERI 2016, Session 2.1, Project Management, Time and Resources, Staying on Track. I'm Dr. Elizabeth Odoni-Paolucci, an assistant professor within the Medical Education Specialization of the Department of Community Health Sciences and Department of Surgery in the Cummings School of Medicine at the University of Calgary. In this session, I will present some information on the importance of planning and managing the resources required to execute your scholarly project and stay on track. By the end of this session, learners may be able to identify common elements that comprise a project plan and determine useful strategies and tools that can help you manage your project and stay on track. As we've emphasized throughout the first workshop session, careful and thorough planning at the outset can ensure a project is based on a solid foundation. Just as it's critical to clearly identify your project scope, you need to spend time identifying the roles and responsibilities of the members on your team. This includes those who are going to provide expertise in conducting your project, as well as the stakeholders you need to achieve buy-in from to help you with the transaction and implementation of your findings, through to the decision and policy-making levels if necessary. To do this, you need to establish measurable success criteria, define a schedule of tasks to be accomplished, and set budget targets. So really, this means recognizing the internal and external factors that may contribute to the success of your project, as well as the potential threats to it. As the project manager and leader, you will need to consider and oversee both the tasks as well as the team. As the project lead, it will be important that you solicit stakeholder and team input. So inviting people to offer their expertise to your project means that you'll also need to find optimal opportunities to engage them. You can solicit their critical reflection as well as their support, and be open to hearing dissenting perspectives regarding your project. It'll also involve that you cultivate positive team dynamics and a safe environment for ideas to be shared critically, respectfully, and constructively. Throughout the cycle of your project, you may also need to coach and motivate members of the team, hire or fire personnel, make final decisions that not everyone on the team agrees with. In the end, though, both you and the others on your team should be reminded of the common purpose of the project, which is really what unifies you. And when managing others, it's most important that you keep lines of communication open to all members of your team. And you can do this by being consistent and transparent in what you say and you do, being open to giving feedback and receiving it, and displaying honesty and clarity in all your communications. When it comes to managing the tasks, as the project lead, you should define and assess critical project milestones through the project life cycle. That means from initiation to planning, execution, and project closure. You should examine what deliverables have been promised, at what time, and provide project updates. This will provide essential information to you, the members of your team, various stakeholders, as well as give information as to how your project is progressing. It also demonstrates your willingness to be held accountable for the inputs and outputs of your project. Throughout your study, you need to maintain pertinent documentation, and that will serve you well both in the short term for the sake of conducting the present project, as well as in the long term, years after this work's been completed and possibly forgotten, and you need to go back to your records to remind you of the procedures and results obtained from your careful planning and execution. In Session 2.4, we present on common problems and how to avoid them. However, it may not always be possible to prevent problems from emerging, and so another important function you will serve is in managing these risks before they become so detrimental to the progress and success of your project. Having a good sense of what resources are available to you can be most useful, including relying on your advisory expert team for their counsel and suggestions. It's not uncommon to feel pressure from others as well as from yourself, and to expand the parameters of your own project once it's underway. As the lead, then, it's really critical that you avoid adding elements to a project without increasing the budget or resources or time allocated to your project timeline. Trying to do more with a budget and timeline that were constructed on one set of parameters will unnecessarily undermine all the planning you did to develop a robust and feasible project. Finally, once the project is done, you should evaluate it. Review the processes and outcomes. What were the project's successes and disappointments or challenges? These kind of takeaways, they'll serve as invaluable learnings for you and your team as you move forward in considering next steps of your scholarly work. So what elements comprise a project plan? Well, you can ask yourself, when are we going to be applying for ethics and grants? How and when will we recruit our participants? When should our interventions be scheduled? When do we access our data analyst? At what point should report writing begin, and at what point should we be done? When will we disseminate our results at conferences or prepare our manuscript? Working through the elements of your project will give you valuable clarity about your project and its scope. It trains you in the skill of knowing what's possible for your kind of research and its demands. What are the planning steps for your project? You want to start by making a list of everything you need and plan to do in the project, along with who is going to do it. For example, I will speak to the program director of X to discuss the possibility of accessing residents in their programs for this research. Some other examples include, our research coordinator will prepare the ethics application, upload all documents, and solicit feedback from the team. Or, a trained interviewer we will hire will conduct interviews with 50 participants. Consider things like, do we need to use a widget to conduct our study? And then note that and identify who's going to buy it, install it, and operate it. Ask about what dissemination plans you have for your project. Do you need to travel? Who will travel? Where are they going to travel? Over how many days? By the end of this process, you should feel like you thought through the entire project in detail. And so someone who's never heard of your plans should be able to clearly get a sense of how to carry out your project. This level of specificity will not only help you know what to do, when to do it, and who's doing it, but it will also provide you with a clear sense of your milestones and deliverables so you can monitor your progress throughout the life cycle of your project. The next step is to estimate how long it will take for you to do each thing on your list of activities. So, for example, how long will it take to employ a research assistant? How many interviews can be done in one day? When will we start writing up our results? Generally, weeks are used to estimate time so that anything that takes less than 1 week can be rounded up to 1 week. Complex projects often have a number of activities that run in parallel. Some parts of the project will need other parts of the project to be completed before they can begin or progress. These interdependent parts of a project need particularly careful consideration and planning. As an example, if the research assistant is going to conduct all interviews, well, you can't start the research until that assistant is hired. Again, how you divide up your time really depends on your project. If it's a 1-year project, you might decide to list your activities or items by month. If you're conducting a 3-year project, on the other hand, you might decide to list items by the quarter. You want to be sure that your project is feasible for the time frame you have, so don't underestimate or overestimate the amount of time that the various stages of the research will take. Be generous enough when working out time frames and verify them with more experienced researchers. Reviewing samples of other project timelines can also give you ideas for what you'd like to include in your own schedule and how you can plan to budget your time. And then the final step is to prepare a visual. This may take the form of a chart, a timeline, or a flow chart. Some people work naturally in tables like Word or spreadsheets like Excel. These are all very useful and can serve as simple visual guides for what you're planning to do. So what useful strategies or tools exist that can help you manage your project so you can stay on track? While you may know of others, I just want to focus on sharing a few useful tools my colleagues and I have used in conducting our projects. As you plan the various stages and activities of the project, where possible and where necessary, don't forget to involve your team in the planning. So one useful project management tool is that of brainstorming. A useful tip is to work backwards from the end aim, identifying all the things that need to be put in place and done in reverse order. From the bare beginnings of the project, use this technique of brainstorming, which involves recording ideas and points, random points, and you usually do this with your project team. Use this technique to help gather points and issues and explore ideas. The second useful tool is that of fishbone diagrams. Although fishbone diagrams are not good for scheduling or showing interdependent time-critical factors, they are very useful for brainstorming and identifying causal or hidden factors which might otherwise be forgotten and which can be significant in enabling larger activities, resource areas, or parts of a process. The third project management tool that I'd like to present is that of Gantt charts, and you've probably heard of these before. They're flexible and excellent models for scheduling and for budgeting. You can construct a Gantt chart using MS Excel or a similar spreadsheet. Every activity has a separate line. You create a timeline for the duration of the project. You can then color code the time blocks to denote the type of activity, and you can schedule, review, and insert breakpoints. At the end of each line, you can also show many cost columns for the activities that you need. So a Gantt chart allows you to keep track of progress for each activity and how the costs are running. You can move the time blocks around to report on actuals versus planned and to reschedule as well as to create new plan updates. The fourth tool is called critical path analysis, and these kinds of diagrams enable scheduling, costing, budgeting, and other financials, as well as project management and reporting. It's a very logical and effective method for planning and managing complex projects and for showing the interdependent factors whose timings overlap or coincide. So critical path analysis is normally shown as a flow diagram. The format looks linear, organized in a straight line, and specifically scheduled according to a time scale. It defines critical and non-critical tasks with the goal of preventing time frame problems and process bottlenecks. In summary, in this session, we looked at how both people and tasks require management in the execution of your project. Specifically, we looked at common elements that comprise your project plan and presented some strategies and tools that can assist you in managing your project and ensuring you meet your project goals on time and within your budget.